Welcome to episode 150 of Explode Your Expert Biz Show, brought to you by GTeX.org.uk. I am your host, the one and only Simone Vincenzi, the Expert Strategist, and this is the podcast for experts who want to become the ultimate authority in their niche while making an impact in the world. And today I have the pleasure to interview our GTeX member, Cindy Etsell. Cindy is one of our clients, and she's the author of Cooking Up Success, and their personal career journey meant experiencing change on a vast scale, working across several sectors, working her way up from senior manager to director. And she is an expert in leadership and sales. And in this episode, we talked about the number one quality that great leaders must have, the 3 pillars that you must have to be an outstanding leader, and also how to create real transformation in your organization. Make sure that you listen to this interview until the end, and you can read all the transcript and bonus resources on our website at www.gtex.org.uk/150. And then you can connect with Cindy on the description below in the show notes as well. If you want to become one of our members, make sure that you apply if you want to become a GTeX member so that we can help you grow your business and become the authority in your niche. Then there is a link below where you can apply to book a call with our team, and then we can immediately see how I can help you out and get you started straight away. Because the reality is, time is money, and money is time. The more time you save, the more money you make. So let's get started. If you haven't downloaded yet our Selling from the Stage Ultimate Checklist, make sure that you download it right now, and also join our Facebook group, Explode Your Expert Biz, to connect with like-minded individuals, like-minded experts that are going to be there side by side to help you out grow your business, and as well you will get exclusive training. One that I'm going to do soon is, for example, how to create consultations that sell like crazy. You will love that one. So link is below. Make sure that you join. If you haven't subscribed yet to the episode, subscribe right now. What the heck are you waiting for? Subscribe to our podcast. And any question that you have, send me an email at simone@gtex.org.uk. Come straight into my inbox. Now, without further ado, it's time to hear from Cindy Etsell and the 3 pillars that will make you a great leader. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Explode Your Expert Biz Show. And today I'm here with the one and only Cindy Etsell. How you doing, Cindy?
Fantastic. Sun shining. I'm absolutely spectacular.
Oh, that's brilliant. I'm really happy to hear that. Now, today is all about leadership. This is what we're going to talk about on this show. And we are going to talk about cooking. We're going to talk about cooking. It's going to be a cooking / leadership class. I'm really excited.
Absolutely.
I'm really excited about this show. Now, Cindy, before we get started and talk about leadership and what makes a great leader and how can we use leadership to grow our business, then what I would love to hear from you is how did you get involved in the leadership sphere?
Well, that's a long story and a long journey, but the highlights basically start with, moving from Canada about 20 years ago, where I'd been in sales and marketing for a long time, and moving from, starting out as a sales rep and then being their senior rep and then saying, hey, we have a little opportunity for you in London. Wouldn't you like to come and launch our product line? So that transformed me and transported me from, being a salesperson right up to being a senior marketing manager. And I had never done marketing before. So on the surface, I was calm. Underneath, I was running as fast as I can, just like a duck battling water. So that was kind of that journey in terms of my goal and that path. And before I knew it, I had a team of people, and I was trying to figure out how in the world do I motivate, inspire, and lead at the same time. And that made me realize how important leadership was. So I started reading a lot on leadership and trying to put into practice little tidbits and everything that I read. And a lot of that was about open door policy, management by walking around, listening, being inquisitive, and then listening and responding back to my team. And from there, I moved into an amazing role with the government. And that was setting up a whole new business with 4 other people, trying to turn a government business into a profitable recruitment outplacement company. And that was the biggest learning of all. So that's kind of that story, which then the final piece of that was moving in. Well, the final piece to get me really into that leadership was moving then into several technology roles from senior marketing manager, head of marketing, chief marketing officer. So you learn as you go and you keep learning every single day. And now I've decided to take that and help others achieve and become the best they can possibly be in terms of training to be that leader.
I'm really curious about what was your biggest highlight in terms of leadership. If you can think about a moment where you were leading a team, and sometimes you have those moments where even like money cannot be good enough for the feeling that we get in that moment. So, what was the highlight when you were leading a team?
Wow, there's a few. And I think probably the one for me was the first really strong leadership role that I had when I was in the publishing sector here as marketing director. And that was taking my team from zero. So we had a little bit of success, but we managed to take our product line so it became 60% of revenue for the whole business. And that for me was absolutely inspirational. And that was my team, but it was also my virtual team. So all of us pulling together to really create and focus on that end goal, which was driving revenue, which was fantastic.
And how about another moment where y- you managed to turn around with your leadership skill a situation that people will say, "Oh my God!" Like literally, "Oh, we do something right now, or we are done."
Well, I think that probably for me was when I'm trying to think what was the best, most likely when we were in a situation, and this is almost like not necessarily a team, but leading people who I was coaching and mentoring. And that would be my first opportunity when I was sharing a story. And the story goes something like this. I'm a salesperson, I'm a senior salesperson, and I am talking to board level individuals and I'm closing a deal. I'm in the middle of nowhere in a very remote spot trying to close this deal at a university. And I walk into the room and I ask, we go through, is this correct? We're going to give you this, this, and this, really only to sign the deal. And then the decision maker looks at me, he winks at me, he goes, and what else are you going to give me? Absolutely. And it was kind of one of those things where you think, ooh, don't let them see you sweat. You don't want to lose the deal. It's all about that self-belief and confidence under pressure. So I thought, okay, I want this deal. I've been working on it forever. I'm certainly not giving him anything else. So I said, could you just clarify for me what you mean by that? I'm going to give you a product that meets the needs you've identified at a price you can afford and in the time we've agreed. And if you're really nice, the company will buy you a cup of coffee. And he burst out laughing and he said, well, it was worth a try. And he signed the deal. For me, that was a turning point, in how to flip a situation from a negative to a positive. But I tell you, I was shaking when I left that room.
I can
For sure.
imagine. Oh my God! Like I'm sure, like your head was spinning in that moment. How
It
did how
was.
did you keep your calm?
Well, when I early in my career, I was a criminologist, so I was trained to work with victims of violent crime, and you have to do mirroring, and you can show no emotion on your face, which is extremely difficult because you hear some sort of horrific things. So I kind of went back to that time. It's kind of remembering those times when you've
Yeah.
had to deal with a difficult situation, and breathing is really good. So I kind of just took a very good breath in, calmed myself down, and I thought, there's no way you're going to get this one over on me. And literally, then when you leave, that's when you start shaking, going, oh my God, what did I just do? So it was a fantastic, powerful moment in time that has helped me move much faster forward.
And where are you from originally?
So I'm originally from Canada, so the middle the prairies, as people will call it, Winterpeg. But then I left there and I moved to Vancouver, and I've been in London now for 20 years, which goes like, lightning speed. But, such a fantastic city.
What do you prefer? It's like if you have
Oh,
to, I know it's a tough question.
it is
Canada,
indeed.
like Vancouver or London?
Well, I would say at the moment in time, London. I mean, when I go back to Canada, I enjoy it. But London, there's so much energy, the culture, the history, the people. Well, maybe not politics at the moment, but also my proximity to Europe.
Yeah.
And I think one of my most amazing moments was being able to call when I was at Cisco on Louis Vuitton in Paris, doing a sales presentation. That would never happen. Never, never would you have that opportunity in Canada. So London most times and most days, especially in the heat wave.
Oh, we are loving our heat wave, guys. You're listening to
Yeah.
this podcast, and maybe by the time you're listening to it, the heat wave is gone. Or if you're not living in London, then you know that London is not known in the world for being the sunniest and warmest place. But for the past 2 weeks, it's been like being in LA here, and it's been
It has
incredible
been.
time. So I have one more question before we
Absolutely.
dive into leadership. You wrote an incredible book called Cooking Up Success.
Absolutely.
What inspired you? So first of all, actually, is this a cooking book? Is this a
No, it's
cook?
not.
It's not a cook. Oh, okay. Like we have addressed that. So it's not a cook. Of course, I knew that, but but the question is, what inspired you to write this book, and call it that way?
Well, I think for me, I mean, my two passions are people and food. And if you think about it, when you are at a party or anywhere, where do people congregate? No matter how small the room is, the kitchen, right? Why do
Hmm.
you think they do that?
I don't know.
Because everything you need's in the kitchen.
That's true.
So I thought, well, let's use food as a metaphor for change. Because I've had and gone through such tremendous change in my career, especially since moving to London. I think about that journey, from publishing to recruitment to government, back into tech, and then back again full circle into outplacement coaching and leadership coaching and presenting. And I thought, how can I combine that in a journey? And that's what the Cooking Up Success came from. It's my kind of personal journey in the 20 years of living in London. But the main reason I wrote it is because by sharing the stories, the funny stories, the terrifying ones, and wielding into that, making sure it's like a needle sewing thread throughout the book, is little tidbits on food. So you got tips from Cindy's recipe book. So you do get a few cooking tips in there and a recipe in the book, but it's mainly about using food as that metaphor for change to break down the barriers and make it a little more digestible and fun.
I
So by
love it.
excellent, thank you.
I absolutely love it, and I think that food is such a great metaphor. We were discussing when we met recently that food can be is made with the different ingredients, and there are all these different ingredients that can be separate pieces together. And sometimes it feels like when you're running a team or you're leading a team, you have all the different people that are different ingredients, and now suddenly you're there and you need to make sure that they gel together, and all the different people are contributing to what becomes then an amazing dish, the amazing end result that then we want to create. And that's, I think, is a nice segue in talking about leadership, because you told me that you have three things that make a great leader, and
Absolutely.
I'm curious right now. I was like, okay, I'm all ears. What are those three things, Cindy?
Well, I think the most important one is communication. So communication is, a lot of people say, well, I'm a great communicator, but it's not just about communication as a whole. It's about how you break that down. So I may have an amazing vision, and that's my monologue, that amazing vision. But if I can take that vision and transform it into a dialogue with everybody who I touch with that vision, so I can tell my story and I can get people along for the ride, then the powerful thing that happens is all of a sudden that vision becomes a reality. Of course, given market conditions and everything else. But there's a lot of people who have a wonderful vision, but there's no focus. And what they're unable to do is to communicate it in a way that people understand and get on board. So that's number one. Communication is key. And of course, we could spend a good 2 hours just talking about communication, because there's verbal communication, but there's also nonverbal communication. And the power there is if I say something, but my body language says something completely else, and I'm completely unaware of that, then again, I'm not going to get the message across that I really want to convey to my audience, to my market, and to my colleagues and
Absolutely.
people who work for me, the people on their way up. They need to embrace that. The second thing is around empathy. So I must really be able to empathize and understand and deal with people. So that empathizing, a lot of people, again, you've got great leaders. And there's a recent quote about something about 85% of companies, when asked, say there's a serious shortage of leaders for the future. And they are desperately trying to find a way to make that happen. And what's fascinating is the old school thought was if you were a leader, it was about power and control.
Yep.
Well, the millennials, boomers, everybody now, that's not enough. We want to be able to understand. When I was doing a lot of stuff in retail, I used to use an equation. Propensity to buy is equal to affordability, features, and benefits. But when you tug at the heartstrings and you absolutely get people to buy in with what you're doing, all of the other conditions go out the window. So empathizing is really, really, really key.
I have a question before we move to the third one.
Absolutely.
So, I found empathy to be a very tricky one.
Yes.
I'm thinking about my personal experience about managing a team as well. And where do you draw the line between empathizing but still getting things done in some situation, or empathizing too much? Because at the end of the day, a team is there to create an end result. And I believe, and this is a core belief that I have, that everyone is important, but no one is indispensable. That's something that we have in GTeX as a core, because we are all there to make sure that we create something amazing. And as long as we are all together creating it, we are all important. The moment you don't do it, that's the door. So I'm very, and so I've been struggling with this power empathy kind of fight. Where do you see the balance, or where do you see the line there?
Well, you're absolutely, you couldn't have put it better. Empathy, when I'm saying empathetic, there is a line, absolutely. So there are always going to be people in a team who are going to take the mickey a bit, aren't there? So you must really be able to, part of being a good manager and a good leader is setting realistic, achievable goals. Mm-hmm. But it's also about developing the people in your team. And a lot of people are completely unaware of what their achievements are. So, for instance, when you are managing that team, senior manager, junior manager, middle manager, it's really important that you understand the different personalities. Part of that cultural fit's really important. And that's about personality and about management and working style. But what you also need to do is understand what each one of them make them tick. And sometimes a team doesn't work because there's too many of the same people in that team. Too many completer finishers and not enough visionaries, for instance. Mm-hmm. Or there's big picture people, but they're unable to make a plan. And it's really important that your team is comprised of that mix that's going to make you successful. So empathy is really about understanding what makes each person tick. Also taking the time to feed that back. And I don't mean feeding it back in a really horrible way, but feeding it back through appraisals, what you're doing really well, what you could do better, and then finishing on what else is doing really well. Mm-hmm. And I will give you an example that I had a middle manager who was reporting to me, and she kept I got her to report stuff to the board. And we sit in that boardroom, and she would never be taken seriously. So she came to me, she said, I don't understand why this is happening. And I said, well, what you're doing is you're coming to us with a whole list of problems. So what I want you to do is think about each of those problems, focus on one, and then think about it from a 360. Okay, here's my problem. Here's my suggestions for solving that problem. When you present that to me as a manager, then I'm probably going to listen a lot more. So it's, again, making sure that you draw the line. I mean, you can't be best friends with the people you work with. I mean, you can try, but at some point in the line, you're going to have to draw that line in the sand and say, look, I really appreciate you, admire you, and I respect what you do, but now you're taking the mickey. So
Yep.
you need, and again, that's about clear, definable key performance indicators, doing the appraisals that a lot of companies put in place and nobody does them because we never have time. And then the managers don't have time because they've got too many to do. So it's really about obtainable, clear, measurable, time-framed results. And so, but still having the empathy and making sure you're out and about and you're talking to the people, that you're not sitting behind this big office, that you're out there listening and hearing and if they want to know something. But also it's about that communication as well. So it's about making sure they know where the company is, because everyone hates when a rule's put in place.
Yeah.
And nobody understands why.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. It answered the question. And thank you for explaining it so clearly. Because I think that as I was struggling with it, I think that a lot of people that are listening right now, they might have a very similar question. And as you suggested, it's about setting boundaries, setting clear boundaries, setting clear achievable goals, deadlines and time frames. And then within that structure, look at creating and really understanding the value of the individual and taking time to value the individual and to understand what's going on as well, because sometimes it can just be a bad moment that they have, and something small that you can put in place can make all the difference for them.
Oh, definitely.
There is a lot going on, and I have these things that I'm not the best manager in the world. I'm a good leader, but I'm not a great manager. That's why I have a manager because in my personality trait, I'm the kind of person that I'll go 100 miles an hour, and I'm like, why are you there? So I need someone that's healthy for one side, because the company is growing. There is a lot of innovation happening. There is explosive growth. But then I cannot always have my team like catching up with me, because I don't take time to feed it back to them. So once we put someone in place that said, okay, you Simone, do your thing. You keep going 100 miles an hour. I'll make sure that everyone is sorted and we are all moving together. Then my life became better and the team morale went up, because finally they had someone who naturally, not forcefully, because for me it just doesn't happen by nature. I'm like, I'm going.
But that brings me to the third point, which is about delegation.
Right. Perfect. Oh, brilliant.
So great segue. You just voiced it perfectly. The big problem is, there's a lot of individuals who they have a vision, they're innovative, they're focused, and they got a transformational, and they can transform a company. But when a company gets to a certain size, and there's a great quote on, they use a triangle: people, revenue, and products. It's like a triangle. And when you focus on the revenue only, the rest gets lost and the company starts to have challenges. And the person who is leading should be leading, looking at innovation, looking at new markets and how we're going to grow. And then, but it's really important that you bring in an operational manager who can actually then transform that, take that transformational style and implement it into a plan and lead the rest of the individuals in the company. And a lot of people don't. They hang on, and they won't let go. And that's when it ends up going right, like that. So absolutely, you need that operational. Think about what you're really good at and what you're not good at. And no man or no woman is an island. And no leader is born. A leader isn't born. A leader is made through understanding, growing, changing, and recognizing when it's time to bring in the right person to help them move forward.
You mentioned delegation right now. Do you have some rules or guidelines for our listeners right now that are in the process of maybe doing their first hires, or maybe they already have a staff but they not delegating? They know that they can do a better job at delegating. Can you give? Do you have some rules or guidelines for effective delegation?
Well, that depends on the individual. So each individual, the more you know yourself and the more you are open and push yourself a little bit every day out of the comfort zone and being realistic. So having a coach, like you and I are working together, even though I know what I need to do, sometimes I need someone to bounce those ideas off of. So I think it's really important that you find yourself a mentor, a coach, and of course I do executive coaching as well, is kind of finding that middle ground so that you recognize what happens. What I used to do, and one of the rules of thumb when we were setting up this business, and it was in government, so you can imagine the parameters in which we had to work. We had someone operational managing everything, and he would not delegate. So I said, I want you to write down every single thing that you do in a day. Just write every little piece and how long it's taking you. And then I want to put what's your priority. So we prioritized them. I said, so you've got all the other stuff that's left. Does that mean that it's not going to get done? So now I want you to think, who else is in the team or people that we can outsource to an agency, a third party, which will allow you to step back and do that. And that was phenomenally powerful. If you look at Stephen Covey has a fantastic book called First Things First. It's a bit difficult to read and get through, but basically what he does is he focuses on the 4 quadrants of time management. And there's a lot happening in quadrant 1, 3, and 4, but it's quadrant 2 that you really want to focus on as a leader because it helps you move forward, or a manager.
Can you give, for people that have not read, can you give a reminder of what's in the quadrant, if you remember that?
To be quite frank, I remember that one of them is the noise. So one of them is, the emails you get every day. All the emails, the phone calls. And what do? We're constantly trying to call them back. So what he suggests, and I did a very thorough time management, I presented on time management, is put time in the diary at the beginning of the day, 20 minutes. Put time in the diary maybe at noon, 10, 15 minutes, and then at the end of the day. And that's your time to return phone calls and emails. If you're getting too many emails and you're lucky enough to have a virtual assistant or a PA and you trust them and you can get them to kind of get rid of the garbage because we get a lot of direct stuff that we're never going to look at.
Yep.
The third quadrant, if I remember correctly, so I might be mixing them up a bit because it's been a while since I've looked at the book, but the content in the next one is really about all of the people who are coming to your desk. You've got a time frame and you open office, you're trying to do a piece of work and you've got this noise in your ear all the time. And people are, because you're well respected, you're open. And this is tough part of being a manager or being an expert. So that's when is why you need to be really firm because everybody wants a piece of you and say, look, I'm really sorry. Can you write, I'll put that on my list to do, but I've got these 3 priorities to do first.
Yep.
So it's really, really, and then the other quadrant is the other thing, the third party stuff, the events, people wanting budget, there's all of that. It's all important in a different way. But if you don't start looking at quadrant number 2, which is focus, vision, planning, looking at how I get into new markets, business development, then your company will not succeed. But you will also have a lot of people running at 100 miles an hour, but delivering nothing.
Yeah, that's so powerful. Thank you very much for sharing, Cindy. I appreciate it.
You're more than welcome, and I'm happy to send. I think I've got the quadrant pieces of work, which I can send to you, and you can post if you'd like as well.
Yeah, so if you can send it to me, then we'll put it in the show notes when the podcast is gonna be published. So guys, now that you're listening or you're watching, then check out the show notes because there is going to be a link where you can download the quadrant so you can work on it because something that I've done recently that changed my life is something called time blocking, and I think that I don't know if Stephen Covey talks about that in that book, but he says what Cindy was saying, what Cindy just said so far. Blocking time for when you are going to get back to people and when you're going to do your emails, when you're going to do your social media posts, when you are going to do your sales calls. And in particular, if you are in this industry, most of the time you might not have at the beginning a big team or you're doing everything by yourself or you might have a small team with 2 or 3 people. So it's a very still flexible environment to be in, where there are roles, but the roles can merge into each other when the needs happen. That's the nature of this kind of companies at the beginning stage. So make sure that you block your time so you can focus on your priorities, and then you train, because what you did, Cindy, you said you're training the other people in how to interact with you, the other team
Yes.
members, because once the things are clear, hey, I've got this priority, you're next on the list, let me do this first, I'll get back to you next, and you do this 2 or 3 times, they already know. So the first time they might be, ooh, why I'm not important enough, but
Yes.
then they just,
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what
by
they
you
say.
explaining that it's not about the person is not important, it's about that there are other priorities in your list that needs to be done before you tackle the other one. I now want to transition to to our lifting the veil section.
Uh-oh.
We are lifting the veil on something that you are doing currently, or that you are using, or a resource or a tool that makes the difference in your business. What is that, Cindy?
Well, there's a few. Of course, working with you, Simone, that'll be the number one, right? Making the difference.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate it. Oh, my ego feels so good
Of
right
course.
now.
I thought you'd like that. The other key thing that I'm doing is networking is kind of a dirty word in the UK. And I run a lot of workshops on building a networking strategy and how you combine that with body language to create that impact. What I do is that, but it also can really take hours and hours and hours of time. So what I've been doing is I went through my LinkedIn contacts. I drew out people that I know, my focus, leadership, technology, medium, small, medium, and large corporates, and looking at the companies I work for and who I know that are leaders that really are trying to develop their people. And I have been using that to kind of just follow up. I send them a quick note, or every day when I'm on the train or I'm on the bus or whatever form of transportation when it's working, I must say, is I try and take 5 minutes and I look. LinkedIn for me is really my
Yeah.
social media channel, that in Twitter. I look at that to see if there's anything happening. And I don't spend a lot of time, but with my contacts, I look quickly who's doing what and what's happening. And if I see anything to do with leadership and entrepreneurial, podcasting, anything like that, I send them a note and say, it'd be great to catch up. So I see you're doing this. I've gone on it. It looks great. And then, you follow through with that. So if you think about it this way, we used to have 4 degrees of separation, 6 degrees of separation, and now it's 4. So if every single person knows 10 people, within that fourth connection, we'll have reached out to 10,000 people. And so don't think about networking. In Canada, we don't say we're networking, really. We say we're going to meet new people. Mm-hmm. So think about it that way. Don't worry and don't try and sell yourself and what you're doing immediately. Have a conversation. Every single person you talk to, you're networking.
Yeah.
So forming solid relationships, being true, being extremely positive. My favorite acronym that I was taught when I was about 19 by my best friend's father was PMA, positive mental attitude. Glass half full, not half empty. And we all have those days when they feel really half empty, especially as solopreneurs.
Yeah.
So you can read my blog on solopreneurs and how to motivate yourself as well. But
Is the blog on LinkedIn or?
It's on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Yeah, it's on LinkedIn. And it's kind of how to motivate yourself when you get to that point. You're like, oh my goodness.
So send me the link as well. So we are going to put it in the show notes.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Cindy, has been a wonderful interview. I loved it. Jam-packed. Now is what I would love to. Now is your time to share with our audience how they can connect with you, how they can get in touch with you. Maybe they want to get your book. All yours.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. You can get in touch with me at www.cookingupsuccess, all one word, .co.uk. You can, if you want, in the next 10 days, you want a copy of the book. It's available on Amazon, and it's available on pretty much every social network. However, if you want a physical copy of the book, I always have some with me. So if you've been on this podcast, within the next 10, 15 days, you can buy this book instead of $12.99 for $9.99 plus postage. So that's an offer for you. The other way you can get in touch with me is of course LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn all the time, and I'm posting continually. And that's just look me up, Cindy Etsell at LinkedIn, and I think we've got the link after the show, don't we?
Yes, exactly. We have also the LinkedIn connection, so you can connect with Cindy, and in particular, ride this wave of leadership. Because if maybe you know someone is running an organization, or you run an organization where their really core focus is in development and leadership and developing people and developing on the stuff, then Cindy is the best person you can bring in, because we've been knowing each other for a few months now, and every time we talk, I'm always impressed about the amount of experience that you have, how much you know, and all these different situations that you've been to. So we know that if you go into a company, the company is sorted. They are in really safe hands. So make sure you connect with Cindy and see which areas can be relevant, so you can collaborate and do some work together.
One thing, Simone, I forgot to say: if you want to copy the book, don't order it on my website, because it'll go straight to Amazon. Just send me a note in LinkedIn or fill in a contact form, and I'll send you. We've got PayPal, excuse me, PayPal online, but you can just send it to me, and we can sort out the rest later.
Fantastic, brilliant. So guys, make sure you get a book. Is incredible. You must have it. And we are gonna have all the links to get a book and to connect with Cindy here in the show notes. Cindy, thank you very much for joining our show. It's been a brilliant interview.
Pleasure. It has been enjoyable and fun. So thank you, Simone, for inviting me.
Oh, fantastic. And ladies and gentlemen, I hope you had a great time too. Well, if you have been listening so far, I'm sure you did. So there is one more thing to do. Subscribe. If you haven't subscribed to our podcast or to our YouTube channel, subscribe right now. And also leave us a 5-star review. Let us know what did you enjoy the most about this show. Up until next time, remember that together we grow exponentially. Ciao.